Alright, welcome to another episode of Rank the Movies. I am Martin Prevost, and we are still talking directors. And this week we're talking about one of my favorite directors, one of my all-time favorite movie makers, Mel Brooks. I like me some Mel Brooks. He's made 11 movies. Well, directed 11 movies. He's made far more than that by producing or creative credit. I love some Mel Brooks, so let's dive straight in to his collected works. So I'm going to rank these from my least favorite Mel Brooks film to my most favorite, because he only has 11 movies, and I made the cutoff at 11. So, first and foremost, I'm going to do the one I like the least, and that's The 12 Chairs. I don't care for it. I've never cared for it. I've seen it a couple of times, and I never find it funny or memorable. To be honest, it's probably been a little while since the last time I sat down with The 12 Chairs and watched it, so I can't really be that anal and in-depth about it like I normally am about some movies. I just know I never cared for the comedy. This was Mel Brooks' first directorial movie, so I guess, weak being taken out first, it's a good sign. It's a good sign, but, it's just not my cup of tea. Alright, next up, silent movie. This was a great kind of farcical idea Mel Brooks had to do a silent movie in the 1980s. It's a completely silent movie. There's one line of dialogue spoken by a world-famous mime. Because nothing screams funny like world-famous mimes. Basically, it's about a man who's trying to make a silent movie, and he's reaching out to a bunch of actors who are playing themselves. It's pretty amusing. It's definitely doesn't hold the same place in my heart as some of the later entries in this list. It's a fun movie, and every once in a while, it's just fun to throw in silent movie. I do own all of these movies on Blu-ray, except one, because it's not out on Blu-ray. So, I love them all equally, and, that I'm stuck with The 12 Chairs, but I'll watch the rest of them, and silent movie falls right in that category. Alright, next we have Life Stinks. This is... this is one of the Mel Brooks films that's lesser known. It was an MGM film, so it's not bundled into a lot of Mel Brooks collections. If you go out and buy a Mel Brooks collection, this film is one of the three you're not going to find in it. Basically, Mel Brooks plays a businessman who makes a bet with another businessman. The bet is simple. Mel Brooks is to go into a slum without anything, no money, he can't use his name, nothing, and see if he can survive, I believe it's 30 days, in this slum, basically acting like a poor person. If so, he'll win a piece of property he wants, but in reality, it's all trying to set him up to get his own property and money away from him, because they can claim he's gone insane, and that he no longer has the best interest of his company in mind. It's not a bad movie. Jeffrey Tambor plays the villain. Leslie Ann Warren from Clue plays our heroine, our main female lead, and it's a decent film. It's got some good laughs in there. It's not a quality Mel Brooks film, but it's not bad. It's definitely a serviceable Mel Brooks movie. I enjoy Life Stinks. If you've never seen it, check it out. Again, this is one you're not going to get in a Mel Brooks collection, just because of who released it. Also in those Mel Brooks collections, you won't find our next film, The Producers. Now that I'm talking, I'm now realizing 12 Chairs was his second movie and The Producers was his first movie. I'm sorry, I corrected my own error now. We have Mel Brooks' The Producers. This is the non-musical version. That one wasn't directed by Mel Brooks. He just wrote the thing. So it won't be on this list. But I do like The Producers, the musical version. It's the same plot. You have Zero Mostel and his name, just totally Willy Wonka's name, totally Gene Wilder, play Leo Bloom and Max. Play Leo and Max, our two main characters. Leo is a bumbling accountant who's kind of afraid of everything, and Max is a down-on-his-luck Broadway producer. They decide to put on the worst play ever seen, so it closes in one night, raise a lot of money, way more than they need, and then keep the remaining money that they never have to spend, basically swindling people. The musical they choose is called Springtime for Hitler. and it's a laugh riot. It's fun. I like the musical version better. I think it's paced better, and I think the musical version's plot is a little more fully looked at. But this version is good too. If you've never seen it, sit down with it. It's got some really good moments in it. It's like you can just feel where it jumps. Sometimes where it just skips something. Like if you're familiar with the musical, it'll skip something you're so used to seeing as part of this movie. It's just not there because this is the original version, so it wasn't added in at that point. I like it. If you've never seen the original producers, check it out. It is a good time. And then watch the musical version, because that's also a really, really good time. Alright, next up, a classic among Mel Brooks aficionados. We've got Young Frankenstein, or Frankenstein, if you were to ask Gene Wilder's character. This is a send-up of Frankenstein, the Frankenstein movies, which, if you watch the Universal monster movie video I did for Franchise Month, you've heard me talk about Frankenstein. I like Frankenstein, and this is a really good Frankenstein movie. In fact, fans of Frankenstein and fans of Young Frankenstein have figured out where this movie would fit into that chronological order of those original Frankenstein movies, because one of the Frankensteins from those movies, because you have the original Baron von Frankenstein, who's in the first two movies, and then it's one of his sons in the third movie, and another one of his sons in the fourth movie, and one of those two sons has a kid, and that's where they believe Gene Wilder comes into this, is that he would have been that kid as an adult. If we were going to put this into the Universal continuity, it's not, actually, but it's a great telling of the Frankenstein story. Gene Wilder, Peter Boyle, Martin Friedman, Cloris Leachman, Terry Garr, they're all, Kenneth Mars, Madeline Kahn, they're all hilarious in this movie. It is a good time. I've always enjoyed Young Frankenstein. It's not, for a lot of people, it's like the greatest Mel Brooks film ever made. I like it. I really do like it. But there are some more I've just really just enjoyed more in my life. Including High Anxiety. So we have High Anxiety. This is Mel Brooks' take on Alfred Hitchcock. It takes a lot of the tropes from a bunch of different Hitchcock films and just runs them together in a comedic fashion. It's a good time. I've always enjoyed picking up High Anxiety and just throwing it in. Again, you get a great cast. Mel Brooks stars in this one. Much like Life Stinks, these are the two movies he actually stars in. The rest of them he normally... Oh no, there's one more. We'll get to the other one. But he only starred in 3 of his own movies. The rest of them he always played secondary roles to the main characters. But he is joined in this one by Madeline Kahn again, who is one of his regular performers, Cloris Leachman, who is one of his regular performers, Harvey Korman, Dick Van Patten, Ron Carey, Howard Morris, and they do a great job. It is such a good movie. Just the way they make fun of the of Alfred Hitchcock's work. Because you have our psychiatrist, played by Mel Brooks, who goes to work at an insane asylum, where he finds out it's most likely people aren't being treated the way they should be and are being used for their money and other things, and he's being screwed with, and he suffers from high anxiety, which in this movie is vertigo, basically, but they call it high anxiety. And Mel Brooks sings a musical number about high anxiety. It's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. Again, Mel Brooks is just a great director. He's so talented. Alright, next we have History of the World Part 1. When I said there were only 2, I was wrong. There's a third one, and that is History of the World Part 1. And Silent Movie. I am really bad at knowing how many movies Mel Brooks starred in. So let's not talk about that anymore. Let's forget that. We're forgetting that. Alright, so History of the World Part 1 is a historic epic, is what it's making fun of. It's throwing up the historic epic. And it's also a kind of a sketch comedy movie, to be put in another word. Because not only is it throwing up the historic, epics, but it's throwing up a bunch of them. A scene takes place in Roman times. A scene takes place during the time of Jesus. You have Moses with the 10 Commandments, or it was 15 Commandments and then one breaks. It's got a lot of great moments. There's a lot of funny stuff in this movie. Not to mention, you have the Inquisition, which is a song and dance number. You have the trailer for the sequel, History of the World Part 2, which brings you Jews in space. It's got a lot of great moments, high quality stuff here. If you've always looked at History of the World Part 1 of, I don't want to see a movie about the history of the world, this is a fun movie. It really is. It has a lot of great jokes, a lot of great acting in it. It's good to be the king. That's all I gotta say. Mel Brooks is the king of comedy, and it's good to be the king. Let's move on to Blazing Saddles. This is another great Mel Brooks film. This is his take on westerns. A lot of his films are takes on things. He's kind of a parody writer, way better than any parody writer, than any other parody writer, to be perfectly honest, because his movies are just that much better. But this one is his take on westerns. You have our black sheriff who goes into the all-white town to rescue them, but they want to blow over Rock Ridge, that is the name of the town, to build a railroad track through it. And it's just, the shenanigans. And you get Gene Wilder again, who does a great job. He really, holds himself up in this movie. And there's the Waco Kid. It's a good time. Again, Mel Brooks, if you're just bored one day and you have a bunch of Mel Brooks movies sitting around, watch them. You're going to laugh your butt off. Alright, now our next movie is very interesting. For those of you who watched the videos of me ranting and raving about movies I've never seen before, as I watched them, then you know I hate all things Robin Hood in live action. Except Robin Hood Men in Tights. This movie is hilarious. This is such a fun take on the Robin Hood story, especially now that I've seen Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, The Adventures of Robin Hood. This is such a better Robin Hood movie. I think I just laughed at this movie too many times to really like those movies. It's the Robin Hood story, except, it has that comedic element in it. You got Carrie Ewells from The Princess Bride stepping in to play Robin Hood, bringing his authentic English accent to the role. You've got Roger Rees playing the Sheriff of Nottingham. It's a great movie. I can't get into why this is such a great movie. It just is. It has so many good comedic moments. This is Mel Brooks' second to last theatrical film he directed, which is super sad because he was such a talented comedian. It's really sad to see that he stopped making movies. And this was his second to last, but it is such a good movie. If you've never sat down with Robin Hood Men in Tights, grab a copy of it. And then watch Dracula Dead and Loving It. This is the last movie Mel Brooks made as a director. It's his take on Dracula, the Bram Stoker tales of Dracula. You have Leslie Nielsen, a comedic genius, working with Mel Brooks, another comedic genius, to bring this comedy to life. I mentioned there were a couple of movies you can't get in the Mel Brooks collection. This is the last one. This is also the only one you can't get on Blu-ray right now, is Dracula Dead and Loving It. Why? I think it's because of this. I know the reason it's not in collections is because of the studio that financed Dracula Dead and Loving It was Columbia, and they didn't make the deal with his other distributors who distributed the bulk of his films. And it's not on Blu-ray because Columbia hasn't released it on Blu-ray, which is sad, because this movie is super funny. I like Bram Stoker's Dracula. I like that movie, and that's the one it's primarily making fun of, is the Francis Ford Coppola Bram Stoker's Dracula, along with the Bela Lugosi Dracula, the original. I like both of those movies. So watching this one and watching them make fun of it, it's a great time. And the scenes with Leslie Nielsen and Mel Brooks just pop off the screen. They are so fun just to watch them go back and forth, trying to have the last word in what I think is Yiddish. They're just going back and forth, trying to have the last word in an argument. It is. I love Mel Brooks. I can gush about his movies all the time. But here we are. We're up to my favorite Mel Brooks movie, Spaceballs. It's in my top 100, as is Dracula Dead and Loving It. It's his Star Wars riff. His sci-fi movies in general, but Star Wars more practically. I am saying a lot. So, I talked about this one in my top 100. It is. If you want to see a good comedy made about Star Wars, this is your answer. You have Bill Pullman, you have John Candy, you have Rick Moranis, and you have Mel Brooks. Again, comedic legends coming together and putting on a clinic in how to be funny. It is so good. It is such a fun movie. Just the first shot where you have the Star Wars scroll going up and then the Spaceball 1 flies into frame. and it stays there for like 45 seconds. It is just passing through the frame. That is great, creative, hilarious stuff when you first see it. And it is funny on a second or third viewing. This is the only Mel Brooks movie I've gotten to see in an actual theater. I didn't see it when it first came out. I was a kid then. But it was re-released 2 years ago, and me and one of my friends actually made sure we went and saw it. They also re-released Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, but we weren't that determined, but we were super determined that we were going to see Spaceballs, and we did. Because we both loved that movie. And it was something to sit in that theater with a bunch of fans of this movie and watch them watch it and just see the majesty on that big screen. It really was something. I do recommend, if you do find out that a movie you really love is playing at a theater, go see it, even if you own it. The experience of sitting in that theater and watching it on a screen the size of the side of a frickin' building, you can't top it. There's no TV that's going to top that experience. So yeah. So, Mel Brooks. I love Mel Brooks. There's my statement of the Mel Brooks films. Hit me up with the comments if you got any. Maybe I said something wrong and, I said something bad about a Mel Brooks movie you love. Maybe you're a person that loves the 12 Chairs and can't believe I just shat all over it. I can't imagine those people are out there. But maybe. Hit subscribe if you want to see more. Check out some of the other videos I've done before. Come back next Wednesday. We're having our last directors, and we're talking about Joel and Ethan Coen. So, we're going to see what I think of the Coen brothers films. Because, why not?